everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome in truly across the continent today. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And if you're joining us for the first time, like a lot of our classes are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you guys showed up in droves today. We've got groups literally from like Nova Scotia, near where I am in Newfoundland, all the way to California. I'm actually closer to North Africa geographically than I am to our speaker, Sam, today, which is pretty wild. We are in a big continent, and a lot of you are joining, so a big welcome in to absolutely every one of you. Now, today we are continuing my favorite series ever. I am throwing professional detachment out the window. I get the thrill in this job of getting to bring in some of the coolest scientists and explorers around planet Earth every single day. Now, every February for 8 years, we have been doing an amazing thing in February. February 11th, yesterday. Some of you might know it as Super Bowl Sunday, but more importantly, it was the International Day for Women in STEM. And so what we do is we always do the entire month solely with the most amazing women scientists and explorers on planet Earth. 55, 60 broadcasts, all live, free, and interactive. But specifically this week, I am so thrilled because we are partnering with the amazing folks at If Then. If Then is an initiative of the Lida Hill Philanthropies. It is the single best initiative showcasing women in STEM of all time. Their website, their social media pages have resources, so many resources, the best resources ever. Honestly, I could flatter. I get to work with a lot of cool people. They are having some amazing stuff. Do check it out when you're done this broadcast. And as part of our celebration with them, we're featuring 16 of their amazing ambassadors, everyone from deep sea divers to pilots, conservation photographers. And today we're joined live by Sam Wynns, who is living my dream job. When I was a boy, I was obsessed with reptiles. I love snakes and crocodiles and lizards and all that stuff. And I wanted to go out and get to hang out with those creatures and talk about them. Now, I'm really lucky. I do get to talk about them. I get to bring in cool people like Sam. But Sam gets to live my dream. She is standing on San Cabrillo National Monument, one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. She's in San Diego, the best city in the United States. I know there's a lot of Americans here today. San Diego is very cool. We're going to join her live from the cliffside overlooking the sea with some snake ambassadors. We're going to learn so much together today. Thank you guys so much for being here. And without further ado, Sam, welcome to the broadcast. Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here in beautiful San Diego, California, specifically at my national park, Cabrillo National Monument. Jesse, so as you know, I am a conservation biologist. I'm a scientist that works for the National Park Service. And here you can see a photo of me with some of my gear when I am what we call out in the field. So it is my job as a conservation biologist, someone who studies life in order to preserve and protect that life. It is my job to study everything that lives here at Cabrillo National Monument so that I can understand it, so that I can conserve it or preserve and protect it, right? But I mentioned something else just a second ago, and that is the National Park Service. And you can see that symbol right here on my jacket. So the National Park Service is actually the group of professionals who take care of all of our national parks, our national monuments, our national seashores, our national battlefields, everything that's in the national park system. And there's actually 425 units in the national park system, everywhere from national parks like Yellowstone or Yosemite or the Grand Canyon to national monuments like the Statue of Liberty, right? Or the national monument that I'm in right now. And it is our mission, as I said, to preserve and protect these special places, these places that are important for a nation's history, our nation's culture, or their amazing biodiverse spots, amazing places with nature. And some of them are all three, like Cabrillo. We're actually really important for all three of those things. But today, we're really going to focus on our natural resources. That is the living things here at Cabrillo, because that is what I am tasked with studying and preserving and protecting. Thank you, Jesse. And so here's some photos of me out in the field, right? So you saw that first one. There's one here. I'm in what we call the Rocky Intertidal Zone, which is also known as our tide pools. And I'm kind of crouched down on the rocks here at a low tide, measuring one of our really important species, a giant snail called the giant owl limpet. And we study that snail because it's really important to its ecosystem. And then you can see the two photos. There's one below that one and the one in the center. And these are what we call herpetofauna monitoring. That's the really fancy term for monitoring or studying reptiles and amphibians. And here you can see me and my fellow wildlife biologist here, Stephanie Root. We have a young striped racer, a non-venomous snake here that we are taking some data on. And then the center picture is one of my favorite pictures of me in the field of all time. I actually have, if you see in my hand there, a little lizard upside down, and she is, don't worry, she's not dead. She's actually asleep. I was taking data on her and she was warming up in my hand and in the sun, and she just was snoozing while I was taking data. So that's why I have such a big grin on my face there. And then here on the right, you can see during the time of COVID, I'm wearing a mask, right? That I am doing some bird monitoring. So we go out and we study all of our birds here at the park as well. All right, Jesse, I think we're done with those slides. You could take those away now. Thank you so much. So that gives you just a little bit of a taste of what I do here at Cabrillo National Monument. But today, I really want to focus on one of my favorite groups of study. And Jesse kind of talked about it a little bit here at the beginning, and that is reptiles and amphibians, in particular, snakes. I am known as the snake lady here at the park. Love them. I have 3 ambassador snakes that I bring out every week to teach people about the snakes they may see here at Cabrillo National Monument. And in fact, we have a very special guest with us today. Wilson, would you like to come say hi to everybody? Here, come here, Wilson. Come and say hello to everyone. Let me just grab
Hello,
my little
Wilson.
friend, Wilson. Here he is. Look at this beautiful boy. Wilson is clearly a non-venomous snake, which is why I'm holding him like this. He's one of the 6 species we do have at the park, and that is a gopher snake. Gopher snakes are very common in the western part of the United States. And fortunately, also unfortunately for gopher snakes, sometimes people, when they see them, they think, oh my gosh, rattlesnake, right? And get scared or maybe try to harm the snake. But as I said, Wilson is non-venomous and not at all dangerous to humans, right? And how can we tell he's not a rattlesnake? Well, first of all, look at this end of him, right? His little tiny, skinny, pointy tail, no rattle, right? He also has a very thin head, right? It's about the same width as his neck, right? Whereas rattlesnakes have a really big, wide head to make room for those enormous venom sacs that are in their mouth, right? So he doesn't have venom sacs. He doesn't have a big head. But sometimes people think he's a rattlesnake, but just by looking at his pattern, he has what we call this kind of chain pattern on him, and also size. So Wilson himself is about 3.5 feet, actually probably approaching 4 at this point. But gopher snakes can get up to 9 feet in length. They can get really big if they're healthy and they have a nice environment to live in here. Now, I said fortunately, unfortunately. So it tends to be unfortunate when people think that Wilson is a rattlesnake. But these guys actually do something called biomimicry, where they pretend to be a dangerous animal in order to protect themselves, right? So if they feel threatened by a predator like a hawk or a coyote or a fox, what they'll do is they'll coil up like a rattlesnake. They will shake their tail, even though they don't have a rattle. They'll hiss, and they even do something where they'll flatten out their head. They make their head look bigger, more like a rattlesnake's head, all in order to trick that hawk, right, or that falcon or that eagle or that coyote that is threatening them into thinking that they're dangerous, to leave them alone. And it's pretty effective in the wild. Um, but like I said, he's not dangerous at all. We love our Wilson here. He's a very good boy. So Wilson is about 12 years old, but these guys in captivity will live about 30 years. So hopefully we'll have Wilson a good long while yet. More important than his length is actually the width of his body. So you can kind of see how wide he is here in comparison with my hand. A snake can eat anything up to the widest part of their body. So Wilson is actually on small rats at this point, um, that we feed him to extra large mice at a time, right? And how does he do that, right? Again, check out his little tiny skinny head compared to the rest of his body. Well, some of you may know that snakes actually can eat in a really amazing way. They don't take bites and chew them like we do. they actually have what we call engulfing jaws, and that means swallowing. So they have an amazing skull that can open super, 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 super wide, way wider than we can open our jaws, like this, right? And then they get they grab their prey and they start working it down their throat. Their jaw does not connect via bones. It's through cartilage. So they can actually move each side of their jaw independently, right? Left, then right, then left, then right. And we call that the pterygoid walk. I challenge you to do a little dance right now, the pterygoid walk, moving each side of their delicious meal down their throat. They swallow it whole and then they digest it whole. Bones, teeth, hair, everything. And we're talking, depending on how warm the snake is, because that's what they need to digest, they need to be warm. We're talking maybe 3, 4 days a week, digest that whole thing. It's pretty amazing. Could you imagine swallowing a 12-inch long submarine sandwich or a huge burrito without chewing it and just opening up and like and swallowing it whole? Amazing, isn't it? These guys are really incredible. And I like doing this talk to teach people about what they might see when they're walking around because snakes sometimes get a bad rap, right? We see a lot of media where, they're chasing people and they're super dangerous. And, of course, there are lots of dangerous snakes in the world, and you want to make sure that you know what snake you're dealing with, right? If you're ever to handle them, and that you're trained, like a trained biologist, like I am. But in general, if you leave them alone, they will leave you alone, right? They actually are everywhere. They're on every continent except Antarctica. They're even up in Canada, where Jesse lives. And they can survive cold weather by banding together in caves or in abandoned mines. And they kind of almost freeze solid during the winter, and then when they start to thaw in the spring, the movement of them all balled up together, moving around on each other, warms each other up, themselves and each other up, so they can go out and hunt again. Or even in the densest of cities, anywhere you have rats and mice, you've got snakes. You just hardly ever see them because, again, they really don't want to have anything to do with people, except for Wilson here. He likes me, or so I think. I hope. Right, Wilson?
I think Wilson's on board with that premise.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what else? So something else that's really interesting about snakes, you can take a look at their pupils if you do get to look at pictures of them. Rattlesnakes, let's see if I can turn him around so we can see his pupil. It's kind of round like ours, right? And this is really an indicator that he is what we call a chase predator. So he not only uses his tongue to sense his environment, that's why he's sticking it out like this, but he actually uses his eyesight as well. Some snakes, their eyesight is not very good, or they are what we call ambush predators, like rattlesnakes for the most part, where they hide under a rock in the dark and they have this kind of like slit eyes, like a cat's eyes, right? And they wait and then they ambush a little mouse that's going by, right? Not so with Wilson. These guys go out hunting for their prey. And they will eat, as I said, they love those small mammals. That's probably their favorite thing, right? Rats, mice, gophers. Eventually they get big enough for gophers. You name it. They'll sometimes eat lizards. They love to climb trees. They're incredible climbers and swimmers. They'll eat tadpoles sometimes. They'll eat birds up in trees, or more likely birds' eggs. It's pretty easy, quick protein, right? And very occasionally, sometimes they'll even eat other snakes, right? These guys have a really wide variety of diet. Well, you'll notice one thing I didn't mention, no veggies, right? So he is what we call an obligate carnivore, right? So he's obligated, he must eat meat. So what we feed him are 2 extra large frozen mice at a time. Not frozen, we thaw them. No mouse popsicles for Wilson. He wouldn't want that. And we wiggle them for him like, hey, buddy, you want some of that? And then he swallows it whole, right? Pretty amazing. Now, I did mention a moment ago, the reason he's sticking his tongue out is this is how his main sense of his environment. So when you think of our 5 senses, right? Seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, and smelling, right? A snake's best sense is actually taste. He is literally tasting the air. So the molecules that are floating around in the area, the things that we smell, like when we go by a rose bush, right? And we smell the roses, right? Those are molecules floating around in the air. We smell them. He tastes them. He's got a special organ on the roof of his mouth called the vomeronasal organ. And that organ actually helps translate the information that comes into his mouth that's attached to his tongue. And it sends a signal to his brain, just like when we look at something, it sends a signal to our brain. Or when we hear something, it sends a signal to our brain, right? He is tasting the air. So right now he's curious. He's out here in the sun. I'm talking a lot, right? It's out of his usual environment. So he is, as you can see, exploring. And in order to explore, he's got to keep sticking his tongue out to taste that air. Now, here comes your big science fact of the day that you can impress people at birthday parties. You ready? All right. You ever taken a look at a snake's tongue before? Take a good look at Wilson's right now. He's posing very nicely for you. What shape would you say his tongue is? Is it shaped like ours? Like this, right? No, right? He has what we call a forked tongue or bifurcated tongue, if you want to get fancy. And that happens for a reason. So, friends, I'm here to tell you that everything in nature, every sight, every sound, every smell, every shape, every color, every pattern, right, happens for a reason. And so there is a reason that a snake's tongue is forked. It is pretty much the same reason that we have two ears and two eyes. That helps us to tell which direction the information that we're getting is coming from, right? When you hear a sound, you have two ears, right? You can kind of tell which direction it's coming from. Same thing with the two surface areas of his tongue. He's tasting the air. He tastes a delicious mouse nearby. Wilson, because of the shape of his tongue and that vomeronasal organ, he can tell which direction to turn to in order to find that mouse. Likewise, if he tastes the air and he smells a hawk nearby, something that might want to eat him, right? He knows which direction to turn away from to help protect himself. Pretty amazing, right? That is the power of science, friends. Some very smart scientist went, I wonder why a snake's tongue is forked. Right? I'm going to use science. I'm going to use the scientific method to see if I can figure it out. And they did, right? So I challenge you whenever you're out and about, outside in nature, even just walking around your neighborhood, right? Or at school, take a look around you. Listen, use your five senses, smell, right? Touch things that you know are safe to touch. Um, Ask yourself some questions, be curious. Then you can go and find out if someone has answered those questions via science. And if they haven't, maybe that is your scientific question that you can answer by using science to do so, right? Cool stuff. Right, Wilson? I think it's pretty cool. Let's see if he wants to take a lap around my neck here.
Yes, that's the best part about having a snake. Actually, is draping them around
Oh,
you like a feather
yes.
boa.
He's a good boy. He'll like it's like the coolest necklace ever. Sometimes he'll just chill here on a cool day. He'll warm up on my body warmth, you know. If you've
Right.
never touched a snake, if you're in a you're in a safe environment, right, with a snake that's being handled by a professional, I do highly recommend it. One of the biggest rumors out there about snakes is that they are slimy, but Jesse can tell you, as can I, that they aren't slimy at all. They're actually super soft and silky. They feel awesome, and you can feel all their muscles moving around. I think they feel great. I wish I could be on Fear Factor in a pit full of snakes and just lay there. That would be awesome and let them slither all over me. I think that would be pretty cool. A snake massage, right? Maybe that makes me weird, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, and another big rumor. You ready for this? I'm going to blow your mind with this rumor. That's to do with rattlesnakes. Maybe you've heard that baby rattlesnakes are more dangerous than adult rattlesnakes, and that's actually kind of a rumor. And here's why. Because when snakes eject their venom, right? So sometimes they bite and they actually don't even eject their venom. It's called a dry bite. But when they eject their venom, it's all of their venom. So you can imagine, right? An adult rattlesnake has a lot more venom than a baby rattlesnake does. That venom composition, it's actually, for those of you who are a little older, it's like really, really complicated proteins. I mean, it can do a lot of different things to your body, right? And so the danger is really in what type of venomous snake, right? Is the type of venom that they have, not if they're a baby or an adult, right? So the next time someone tries to convince you that baby rattlesnakes are more dangerous than adult rattlesnakes, you can say, aha, actually, I heard, and
Mhm.
start a conversation about your snaky friends. But of course, I don't have to worry about that with Wilson. I would not be handling a venomous snake like this, right? That would be way dangerous. That would not be
Yes.
appropriate. So he is non-venomous and non-dangerous.
Sam, this is fantastic. And by the way, you never know what's going to happen with live animals. You know this better than anyone, having worked with them for years. But Wilson is putting on a show. Like Wilson is doing an amazing job as a snake ambassador today of highlighting how amazing snakes are. This is wicked.
Isn't he awesome? Yes. The one thing I worry about really with the snakes that I work with, any animal can bite, right? Just like people can bite, little brothers and sisters can bite, right? I've never been bitten by Wilson, and in fact, he's never bitten a person. So I'm not really worried about being bitten. What I am worried about is them going to the bathroom on me. I know some of you are going, ew, in class, but sometimes that's the life of a field biologist or wildlife biologist or conservation biologist, people who work outside with live animals, right? Sometimes they get scared and that'll happen, and that's okay, right? That's all right. It's no big deal. It's just part of the job. I don't love it, but it's all right. I can deal with it.
Sam, we have a bunch of grade ones today, and I know they're kind of excited to get into questions fairly soon. So what I'm wondering is if it's okay with you if I run our Kahoot together, where we do a little question answer period with the kids, and then we start taking some questions. And then if you've got other ambassadors to show us or anything else that you wanted to stress, we can bring that in our final 20 minutes or so of the program. Does that sound good?
That sounds awesome, Jesse.
Amazing. Well, I will start by noting that we have a Kahoot today, which I got so excited about, Sam, at the beginning that I forgot to actually mention. So Kahoots are little 4-question quizzes that we do to test your understanding, have a little bit of fun, learn a few things about snakes together. And so if you want to type in kahoot.it and bring up that game pen as a separate tab on your computer, you can do that now. And if you don't want to play along online, that's totally fine. You can just yell out the answers in your class. And what Sam and I will do is maybe give little hints when there's a few seconds to go for each of these. Now, what you win is our everlasting respect. Sam and I are just like amazed if you can nail these questions. And we have covered quite a few of them in this broadcast today. So I'm really excited to see your answers. The faster you answer, the more points you get. We're going to do this, and then we're going to head to Miss Trainer's class first for a question when we go to our Q&A in a minute. I promise we're coming to everyone, though. We got lots of classes with us, which is very exciting. All right, Sam, here we go. So much fun. I'm a huge snake lover. This has been just an absolute hoot. My face hurts from smiling the whole broadcast.
This is how I feel every time I handle my snakes. I love them so much.
How many kinds of snakes are there in the world? We did not cover this. Is it 40, 400, 4,000, or 40,000? This is rough. This is close to this. Are there only a few kinds of snake? Are there a ton of kinds of snakes? What do we think? And don't worry if you get it wrong. Good to throw in a guess. I always like taking a shot. Let's see. 12 answers in. Ooh, most of you thought 40,000. Actually, it's only about 4,000 snakes. So there aren't as many snakes. There's way more things like kinds of bug, like insects, beetles, ants. But a lot of the big creatures like mammals, all the things with hair in the world, there's only about 6,000 of us, which is really kind of weird. So I like your shot. That was a good try. Funny koala takes our lead, Sam, as we go to question 2. Yeah. I have to throw in a reticulated python question because I was like you, obsessed with creatures as a kid, and the reticulated python was my favorite creature. So it's the longest snake on earth. How long is it? Or how long can it get? 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, or over 30 feet? What do we think? Now, like all things getting long, it's not always getting this long, but it can. It has been recorded. And the answer is yes, over 30 feet. As long as your classroom, as long as 7 of you strung out end to end in your class, which is ridiculous.
Woo.
That snake weighs twice, maybe 3 times as much as Sam does. So she would not be having it draped over her shoulders. It would just like collapse her. We don't want that.
It would. There's no way I'd be able to hold it on my own.
Charming Gecko takes our lead. Okay. True or false? Snakes feel slimy. We talked about this explicitly. I knew it was going to get brought up, and I wanted to make sure. Okay. So a lot of people think this. They think they feel like a slug, even like a frog, which can feel a little wet. Snakes do not feel that way. They feel really silky and nice and powerful. They're like a beautiful animal to hold. I really hope you all get a chance to hold a snake in your life because they are lovely. All right. Sam, with Charming Gecko, it's fitting that our hurt is in our lead as we go to our final question.
Yes, we stack the decks here.
some snakes have an extra sense. We talked about sensitive snakes. And I want to say Sam didn't even go quite where I thought she might with this. Whereas some snakes, maybe kind of sort of, can like sense heat in a way that we can't. Like you've seen, like, I don't even know where you'd see that, like sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
True. But yeah.
It's
Sam,
like
do you want to
heat,
tell us
it's
about
like night vision goggles, basically. So pit vipers, like rattlesnakes, can see in the dark. Things that are warm-blooded light up like a Christmas tree for them. It's crazy. I
that?
hope I'm not giving any of it away right now, by the way.
It's amazing. No, it's perfect. We are
Okay,
done. We're
good.
fantastic. Funky Koala, you are in our lead. You beat out Charming Gecko at the end. Way to go. If you are any of these people, let us know who you are in the chat. And what we're going to do is go to our friends in Kelowna, a Bankhead Elementary Miss Trainer's class. Welcome in, grade ones, and take us away with our first question. Come on up, unmute your mic.
Okay, who has a question?
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Okay, go. Okay, come on up. Who has a question? Okay, this is Lucas.
Hi, Lucas.
How do snakes even like eat the food when they squish the food in?
Great question. So they swallow it whole, just like swallowing a huge burrito or submarine sandwich. And they have in their stomach, just like we do, a strong, something called an acid. It's a chemical in their stomach that helps digest their food. And for those of you who are a little older, it's hydrochloric acid, just like humans have, right? And so it just slowly wears away at all of the stuff that's in their stomach and kind of digests it before it goes into their gut. It's pretty amazing stuff, right? But what they do need, because snakes are cold-blooded, they do need to be warmer. The warmer they are, the better their digestion, right? So oftentimes in winter, snakes don't even want to eat because they're too cold. And they'll just kind of refuse food for a while until they warm up, until the seasons change again. Great question.
Great question. YouTubers, don't be shy. Please feel free to share there. But we are going to head to Miss Padgett's class in Cherokee, Texas. Every time I have you guys in, I'm so happy. Welcome back to the broadcast, guys. Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Getting quick. Okay. My dad actually owns like 23 snakes, and we raise them.
Whoa.
And what is the most scariest snake you've ever encountered in the wild?
Ooh, great question.
That's a really good question. So I think for us here in Southern California, the most dangerous snakes that we have around are different species of rattlesnakes. The nice thing about rattlesnakes is that they often warn you that you're getting too close to them, right? With that rattle, that's what it's for, right? They want to have nothing to do with you. So they're like, hey, you're about to step on me. I'm camouflaged. Back off, right? But it is really loud. If you've ever had a chance to hear a rattle from a rattlesnake, it is extremely loud and it is unmistakable. And boy, your body responds of like, oh shoot, danger, right? So that to me, one time I had a rattlesnake. I was hiking through a trail and I didn't see it, and I got really close to it, and it rattled really loudly at me to let me know it was there, and everything was fine. I just stopped and backed off. And that's what you do, right? You just stop and back off. But yeah, that was kind of the most dangerous and the most scary encounter that I've had.
Very
Great
cool.
question.
So the thing is, I've never heard a rattlesnake live, but I've always wanted to. Like, I don't want to come close to one where I threaten it and it feels the need to do that. But I'd also love to know the sound, because you said it's unmistakable, and I'd be really curious what that's actually.
Totally. You can listen
Okay.
to some YouTube videos, but it's never the same, right? Live is
Yeah,
always better.
I'll go check it out when we're done. We'll make that
Yeah.
happen. Great question, man, by the way. And I'm glad you've had the chance to interact with snakes and see snakes, because they really are. They're lovely creatures. They're really cool. Miss Stevens class, we're going to head to California, our closest to you, Sam. If you guys want to unmute your mic and Banning, you come on in and you're good to go. Hey, guys, first graders. Let's see. If you want to unmute your mic, we can come check in. I can also come back in a minute if you're still thinking about it. That's totally fine. Oh, there you are.
Here we go.
Hey, why do the snakes eat the bunny's eggs?
Oh,
Why do snakes eat birds' eggs? Well, why do you eat eggs, right? Anyone who isn't a vegan tends to eat eggs, even if the eggs are just cooked in things, right? Eggs are tasty, right? They're high in nutrients, right? Lots of protein. Also, it's really easy for them, right, to get eggs. Like, they don't fight back, right? Rats and mice will fight back sometimes. Where eggs, they can't move, right? They're not alive, so they can just swallow that egg whole. On top of that, the shell of the egg is filled with something that snakes actually need for their bones and their teeth. It's what we need for our bones and our teeth too. It's something called calcium. So that gives them that calcium, gives them that mineral that they need for healthy bones and healthy teeth too.
Yeah.
Great question.
I used to drink 5 glasses of milk a day for my first 20 years I was alive. So my bones are like iron. I have all the calcium. If you need calcium, I can just like give you calcium. Got it in spades.
Good to know, Jesse. I'll call you up for running
Sam,
low on milk.
we're going to do a second round of questions in a minute, but I want to harp on something. So again, we're focusing on amazing women in STEM, and I understand you have a really cool project that we didn't get the chance to talk about in the main broadcast, but the Ecologic Institute. Could you explain a little bit about what this is about and how awesome it is?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a bunch of free resources for you teachers. So I do a lot of projects here at Cabrillo National Monument, as you can see, right? So I do science as well as communicating that science to others. And out of all of the projects that I do, my favorite by far is something called Ecologic. And Ecologic is about introducing youth, particularly youth who don't have these options or are missing in STEM fields, right? There's not a lot of diversity in STEM fields still, to real women in STEM and the real science that we do in our national parks. So Ecologic started as a free 2-week STEM summer camp for girls that is run by women scientists at Cabrillo National Monument doing the real science at the park. But it has now since expanded to workshops, both online and in the community. So if you're far away, you can access our free virtual workshops with real women in STEM, as well as expanded learning, like 2 to 4 weeks STEAM curriculum. We add art to the mix as well. So I definitely recommend you check it out and see everything it has to offer. All of these resources are free because really we're just like If Then, right? We're focused on getting more diversity in STEM fields, right? We need every voice at the table to solve big problems.
We are going to be sharing all of that info with all our classes. Sam's got some other amazing resources, virtual, in person. If you happen to be near San Cabrillo, you can head there locally. If you aren't and you're across Canada and the US, check them out online. I'm going to make sure all our registered classes have that, but that is very special. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that. Now, I understand that Morgan has a question in Miss Trainer's class. I'm going to come back to you guys. Come back in, BC, and take us away. Hey, guys.
Go ahead.
Why do snakes don't chew on their food?
Why not chewing?
That's a great question, right? So nature is amazing. It's filled with so much diversity, so much variety, right? Different shapes, different sizes, different forms, different abilities, right? And so snakes, it just so happened that they evolved that way, right? Where they just don't have to chew their food. They do one big meal at a time and digest that big meal versus we have to chew all the time, right? We have to eat all the time. One aspect of that I will say is maybe you can talk in amongst your class. Are snakes warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Right? Are snakes warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Well, they are cold-blooded. And humans, are we warm-blooded or cold-blooded? We're warm-blooded, right? And to warm our bodies from the inside like we do, it takes a lot of energy. So we have to eat all the time to get that energy to keep our bodies heated, right? Snakes, not so much. They only have to eat once in a while. One big meal at a time, once in a while, that'll last them for a long time. In fact, the longest snake on record went 1 year on one meal alone. Can you believe that? I can't go 20 minutes without eating a snack. I mean, he just ate like one big meal, lasted the whole year. Now, that's not, they don't want to do that really. They would rather eat more often than that. But for Wilson, for example, we only feed him once every 2 weeks. And he's living like a king. That's great for him. He's happy. He's full and happy. In fact, he refuses the food sometimes where he's like, oh, nope, still full from the last meal. Right? So really good question.
A really good question. We're going to take 2 more questions before we wrap up together. So Miss Stevens, I'm going to head to you guys first, actually. Then Miss Paget's class, I'm going to wrap up with you guys in just a minute. But come on back in California and take us away. Just unmute your mic. Hey.
Why are they long?
Why are they long? Why do they look like they would look, Sam?
It's a great question. I mean, they do come in different shapes and sizes, right? So some are much shorter than others. So there are some snakes that are very small. And then there are some snakes that are enormous, like the anaconda, right? But why are they shaped the way they are? Well, for instance, they don't have legs. You may have noticed. And I think for that's pretty easy for them to get down into little holes and things like that, right? They don't have these limbs in their way, right? They can get into tiny, tiny spaces. The other thing is they swallowed their food whole, right? So that means they need to have a big stomach. So all of their organs, like their kidneys, their lungs, their stomach, we call elongated. So they're really long, right? And that way he can swallow another snake, for instance, and it just goes right into his long stomach throughout his body. That's a great question. Again, nature comes in all different shapes and sizes. Like, spiders have 8 legs, right? We don't have 8 legs.
What?
Yeah.
Speak for yourself. No. I really encourage kids. Sam is like me. Like, we just love wildlife, and maybe you don't love all creatures, but find some creatures you do love, because animals are endlessly fascinating. And if you're a tremendous nerd like us, it's the best. Go learn, go discover, go to a museum or a library.
Yeah.
There's so much to keep learning going. And I'm so glad we got to hang out with my favorite creature here today. Now, on that note, I'm going to bring in Miss Paget's class. Cherokee, if you want to wrap us up with one final question, I'm coming to you live in a second. And I'll note just again, if you guys want to check out the rest of our If Then series, we've got 14 more broadcasts on the go this week alone. The amazing If Then She Can website, social media pages, so much to learn and discover. And then ecologicinstitute.org if you want to check out Sam's project. I'll be linking all this into your teachers in a minute. But just a quick follow-up on all that I wanted to share. But Cherokee, come on in, take us away, guys.
We live in a very rural area, and we don't live very close to a hospital. So if somebody were to get bitten by a rattlesnake, how long would it take them, or how long would we have to live before we would die?
What an interesting question. Thanks, man.
Really interesting question. And this is one of the reasons why. So you're going to try to avoid being bitten by a rattlesnake at all times, right? So most times that when rattlesnakes wear on our body, they bite us, it's our hands. That's the most common, and it's because we're doing something we shouldn't be doing. And that is trying to move the snake, trying to kill the snake, trying to take a selfie with the snake, or we're not paying attention, right? So maybe there is a low rock and we're clearing some land, right? And we just stick our hand under there to move the rock, and there's a snake hiding under there, and it scares the snake, right? And it'll bite you as a defense mechanism, right? The other thing is, this is the answer to this question depends. So if you do get bitten by a rattlesnake, it's pretty rare. You're probably more likely to be hit by lightning than to be bitten by a rattlesnake, though don't quote me on that. It is fairly rare. Were you to be bitten, you don't know if it's a dry bite or if venom has been injected, right? About 50% of the time, it's a dry bite where there's no venom, where they just go, oh, okay, you're not actually scary, I'm not going to inject it. But you should always treat one of these bites as if you have been injected with venom, right? Because you don't know, and you certainly don't want to mess around, right? So when I said it depends, it really depends on the type of rattlesnake. There are different types of toxins that affect your body differently, and they're on a different time scale. But you're going to know almost immediately because it hurts. That venom injection really hurts. So what you're going to do, if this were to unfortunately ever happen to you, is you're going to lay down. You want to get your head and your heart kind of on the same level, right? You're going to lay down, and you're going to get somebody else to help you, right? To call 911. If you can, if you were able to see the snake, right, or take a picture of the snake, that's really helpful, because knowing the type of species of snake it is can actually help when they give you antivenom. So that's helpful, but don't do anything that is risky to you, right? Don't go hunting for the snake or anything like that, right? So you're going to slow down, you're going to stay calm, you're going to lay down, you're going to stay calm. So slow, deep breaths, right? Because if your heart's pumping faster, it's moving blood faster around, and then that's moving that toxin faster around in your body as well, right? So it does depend. Usually it's hours, right? So hopefully you'd be able to get some help within that time. But this is why it's also important not only to be mindful and to know your surroundings, to tell people about where you're going, and always when you're out in nature, if you can, to have another person with you so they can seek help if needs be. I hope that answered your question.
That's a really good question. I want to note, just because I was looking up some map stuff, Austin's about an hour and a bit away. So You would go there, you'd go to the nearest big city. If you did get bit by a snake in a way that you needed anti-venom, if you needed medical care that wasn't locally available, you get to the nearest big city and you do that. I'm in the same sort of boat where I am in Newfoundland now. There's a lot of things that wouldn't be available here. I've got to drive for some things if I needed them. And I'm really glad we got that question. That's a very unique one. By the way, rural is really hard to say. So don't worry at all. Guys, this has been so much fun. I know we could talk all day together about snakes, but I also know we're nearing the end of the school day for some of you. So Sam, before we wrap up, is there any last message about snakes that you want to leave our classes with before we say farewell?
I think I just want to leave you with something about science, actually. So, being a scientist, if you're someone who likes to ask questions, someone who's curious about the world around them, somebody who likes to go exploring or going on adventures, someone who likes puzzles, who likes mystery, you're a scientist at your core, right? And I will tell you, I have the best job in the world. So these things that I love to do, I get to do for my job. And every day in college, my mind was blown by all of the amazing things in nature, right? So science is like magic but real. So if this is stuff that really piques your curiosity or is like passion for you, go for it, right? Go for it. We need more scientists like you at the table to help us preserve and protect these amazing animals.
Sam, there is no better final message than that. I couldn't have said it better in a million years. Thank you so much for joining us. Your passion and enthusiasm is so palpable. Classes, thank you for joining across coast to coast across Canada and the US. So nice to have you. Check out our If Then series for more. Check out Sam on all manner of social media. I'm going to link in all your teachers with that in a minute as well. And I know some of you have had to go, so I'm going to bring in Miss Stevens' class and Miss Paget's class to join me in saying farewell. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now, guys. We'll